400 registered attendees for today's webinar, which is eligible for 1 credit from the ACI. Let's get started by giving one lucky attendee a 2017 Technation Tour t-shirt for answering this trivia question. Today's webinar sponsor, PartsSource, is headquartered in the Buckeye State. Which state is known as the Buckeye State? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I want to invite everyone to join us at the MD Expo Conference, which will bring HCM professionals from across the nation to Irvine, California for 3 days of learning, networking, and the latest advances in technology, products, and services. Registration is now open. You can receive complimentary admission if you're a hospital employee, military, or student by using the VIP Pass Compliments of PartsSource found in the Webinar Wednesday workbook. If you did not receive a workbook, you can download a copy now in the handout section of your dashboard or visit our website for a copy there. Details can be found at mdexposhow.com. All right, and the winner of our trivia question and the 2017 Technation Tour t-shirt is Sharon King. Congratulations. The correct answer was Ohio. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, PartsSource. PartsSource is the industry's leading provider of biomedical and imaging replacement parts through comprehensive technology tools. As a single source for parts procurement, their top priority is delivering outstanding service to clinical engineering, facilities, and supply chain departments. Visit PartsSource.com for more information. Our presenters today are Nicole Hemphill, Business Development Director at PartsSource, and Jason Meister, Director of Technical Services at PartsSource. Nicole, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you everyone for taking time out of your afternoon for joining us on today's webinar, Best Practices in Standardizing Medical Parts Procurement Processes. My name is Nicole Hemphill. I am a Business Development Director at PartsSource and have worked in the industry for almost 9 years. Often I hear the same questions being asked during my client visits, and today I'm excited to share the answers to the problems so many of you are trying to solve, such as, today it takes at least 45 minutes to place an order, taking away from areas where time spent is more valuable. How can I shorten this process? I'm often pressured to provide order status updates. Is there a better way for me to gain visibility to easily provide this information? Our organization is growing. How do I create one consistent procurement process and share it across multiple sites? I keep hearing about workflow automation, but I don't understand how it works or what it means. What are the benefits? Today's goals and objectives are to help you understand why your department should be standardizing the procurement process, share modern best practices used by top U.S. health systems, such as Trinity Health, and reveal the benefits your department can receive if the procurement process is standardized. At the end of the webinar, we'll be sending over a Trinity Health case study. So, to begin, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Jason Meister. With that, I will turn it over to Jason.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. What we're going to be running through today is really the beginning process of discussing what standardization for the parts procurement workflow looks like. And when we look at parts procurement, it really is going to move beyond just ordering parts and receiving those parts in. We really want to look at that entire procure-to-pay cycle. So all the way from the time that you identify that a part is needed, all the way through an invoice getting paid, and how you track both the information as well as the order itself. So it's not only just how do we standardize the process of receiving those parts, but how do we improve the quality of the information is going into the individual systems, and how do we make and modify changes to the overall process as we move down the road and we're able to identify and improve on different opportunities. Now, why process standardization? Really, when we look at process standardization, there's a number of different reasons why we would want to standardize. One of them being it facilitates an early identification, proactive management of risks. It allows us to improve accuracy and understanding of the part spend, which is something that is greatly lacking in most organizations. It provides a stronger foundation as we're able to process, and the results are consolidated across multiple systems and multiple facilities. Really, having a standard process allows us to remove a lot of variables and have a better understanding of what we're doing across multiple facilities or just in one facility, depending on how large your organization is. It also improves the knowledge and management of distribution of that knowledge. When you think about what you're spending and you're thinking about what you're buying, understanding whether or not something lasts through its warranty, whether or not a vendor is actually living up to their standards, supplying you both the pricing that you expect as well as outlasting their warranties. Many of the systems that are in place today just do not support delivering that information easily to you. It also enables the implementation and modification of those processes and individual control methods. So it's more about setting it up as it should be today and then being able to take a look at it in 2, 3, 6, 8 months, a year later, understanding what changes need to be made, and then being able to easily implement those changes across a large number of people or across an entire organization. Now, so when we look at implementing best practices for parts procurement, the first steps are really understanding where we are today. When you look at an individual system, you're going to have many different combinations of not only the systems that are in place, the personnel and workflows that are going to be supported, but also the policies that an individual organization is going to already have in place. So there's a lot of variables, and really understanding your current shortcomings and the opportunities you have to improve is going to be the first step anywhere you look to standardize. Without understanding where you're working, you can get into a situation where you do a whole bunch of change that doesn't actually improve any one particular task or one particular element of that process. Next would be to institute technology and automation. It's a simple term for something that can be very complex depending on the systems you're working with and how they're connected to each other. But it's generally understood that being able to leverage technology that's available and provide automation to reduce the manual effort around the processes is going to give you time back and is going to give you a better understanding of what you're doing and give you a clearer picture of where you need to go. You're going to want to monitor and manage your supply chain and consolidate vendors. Many organizations, if you look in the clinical engineering space, are going to be utilizing 150 to 200 plus individual vendors that have individual return policies, warranty information, account numbers, invoicing practices. Really, they're dotted across the country, so you're going to deal with different time zones and support structures. Being able to actually understand the supply chain that you're utilizing, measure them not only on intuition or feeling, but on actual data as how well they're performing for you and for your organization, and then consolidating those vendors so that you can streamline the process at the same time is going to be a big win for the organization. And then obviously delivering more to the end users in the utilized systems. It's really about how do we get the people that are using these systems and involved in the procurement process the information they need, when they need it, where they need it, and then also looking at the systems that are being used and better providing those systems with information. Having a clear understanding of the materials that are applied to an individual work order, having quality part numbers, descriptions, and pricing involved so that you can report on an individual asset, a set of assets, a modality, it is going to be a huge benefit when you're looking to truly understand how that particular asset or that piece of equipment is performing, and it'll allow you to make long-term decisions about when it's time to replace, change, or modify any of the existing asset structures inside your organization. So when we look at the entire procure-to-pay process, I really sort of chunk it up into 4 individual sections. The first is going to be identification and sourcing. The second is going to be ordering. The third is going to be tracking and monitoring. And then the last is going to be reconciling. And we'll walk through how we can improve and how each of those individual pieces of the process can be tied together and how we should look at it as a whole. So if we look at identification and sourcing, this is the very first thing that happens. We know something's broke, but we need to find out what it is. Sometimes you'll know exactly what the part number it is, but other times you'll be looking for a technical resource, either from the manufacturer in the form of a phone call, looking through a service manual, talking to another technician who would know. Identification can take a long time, and then sourcing is who is going to sell me that part. Obviously, you can always call the manufacturer, but are they going to be the best bet to provide you a quality part quickly as possible and at a good price? Understanding those items and those different elements is going to be very important. So if we look at the first section, which is use quality and performance data to actively manage the supply chain, that is understanding whether or not a particular vendor or a set of vendors is living up to their end of the bargain. How quickly are they able to get you your information? How quickly are they shipping, and how often are they supplying you the correct part that is in good quality when you need it? And then as they tend to slip, or if an issue occurs, How do you actively manage that supply chain to ensure that you're only using a high-quality vendor for the parts that you need? So through a database or through another system, but actively managing and taking the anecdotal evidence out of how a vendor is performing is going to be a huge part in streamlining and standardizing this process. Leveraging third-party providers to consolidate your vendors. When you have the opportunity to purchase from a single vendor and reduce the number of vendors that you interact with, the organization as a whole is going to be streamlined because there's going to be a reduction in complexity. You're going to have fewer types of invoices, fewer different vendors to follow up with, a consolidation of information, and as you look to integrate and bring this information and these workflows into your system, you'll have fewer systems that you need to bring in and manage individual integrations with. Utilizing a connected technology platform. Every organization is going to have at least two unique and distinct systems. They're going to have an asset management or a CMMS system where they're going to be managing their work orders, and they're going to have an ERP system that's going to manage the purchase orders. And how these systems work together and how information flows in between them is going to be very important, ensuring that you have high quality information in both of these systems. The ERPs that are going to have your POs are going to have invoices come into them. They always get the most attention because they have dollars associated. But as a clinical engineering department, you're going to have the most value with the information that's coming back into your asset management system or your CMMS. So how those systems are connected and the way that we're able to flow data back and forth will improve the overall organization's ability to streamline the process and allow the people who are working on the process to work exactly where they should be. You can have a technician maintaining their workflow inside of the asset management system. You can have purchasing and AP working inside of the ERP, but connecting those systems and allowing the data to flow freely is going to improve the quality of the process and allow you to standardize. And then implement a manageable parts marketplace. And this really speaks to the active or dynamic supply chain that exists. Really being able to look at what you're purchasing, have an understanding of what's being purchased, and being able to modify what and how you're purchasing without a lot of work is going to be really important as you look to streamline. Many organizations will have a lot of different technicians that sort of source and purchase parts on their own. And if you look at the data without understanding why and where they're purchasing it, you'll see the same part in your system purchased at different prices, and it will not be easy to slice and dice or understand why one of them may have performed better than the other. And as you go to make changes and you say, no, I've looked at 3 different options, this is the one direction that we want to go as an organization, there needs to be an easy way to make that change and allow it to flow across all spectrums of the process. So you don't have to micromanage every individual transaction. So really building that marketplace, building that list and that supply chain of vendors that you can then actively change without having to micromanage is going to be a huge key in being able to streamline the process and ensure the standardization across the entire organization and facilities so you all get the benefit of what's been learned. If one facility in your organization knows that a particular vendor has not been sending them good parts for 6 months and they don't purchase from them anymore, that information should be spread across the entire organization without another facility having to go 6 months of bad parts before they realize that that vendor is also not worth their time. On the flip side, when a good vendor is found, someone who's doing a great job in supplying you a high quality part at a great price, being able to share that knowledge and quickly implement those supply chain changes across your organization is going to be a huge benefit, and it's going to allow the organization to gain as much as possible as quickly as possible. Once the parts have been identified, we're going to move into the ordering process. And this, has a lot of different flavors depending on the way that the systems and processes and departments are aligned, but really it all starts with the ability to create a part request. And moving from a paper part request or a email or a word-of-mouth part request and into an electronic part request where you're able to gather all of the important equipment and product information while creating that request is going to allow those parts to be ordered as quickly and accurately as possible. Many organizations that utilize central purchasing or a purchasing group, those individuals are not going to be familiar with the equipment that's being repaired. They aren't going to be familiar with whether or not it's acceptable to purchase from a secondary source or if this is a life-critical piece of equipment that demands an OEM part to be replaced. So gathering that information at the technician level, allowing it to be electronically transmitted with everything that is needed to place the order including the importance of the request so that the parts can be ordered with the priority necessary. Making that electronic is going to allow the purchaser to do their job and give the technician the control they need to ensure that the equipment is being repaired with what is expected in order to have a high quality of confidence in that part as that piece of equipment goes back into circulation. During the ordering process, we also want to reduce any manual data entry or re-entry. So this goes back to electronic forms. It's really nice to have an electronic email form that gets filled out and sent to purchasing. But if they are manually then moving that information into the purchase request, it is going to be something that is going to take up a lot of extra time and introduces that human error opportunity. So anything we can do to reduce data entry into the systems and re-entry is going to improve our entire process. This starts all the way down at the CMMS level. When you have all the long tail of parts that exist inside of clinical engineering, the biomed and imaging spaces, you have individual technicians entering those parts into the CMMS. If you're not monitoring and managing the way the information goes into the system, it's very easy to get duplicates and triplicates where dashes aren't used or they are used, capitalization, different levels of description, different levels of price entry. Really anything we can do to automate the flow of information from one system to another and to ensure that high quality data is going into the system is going to make it easier in the initial phase of understanding what needs to be ordered and getting it ordered quickly, but it's also going to help tremendously at the end when we look to pull that data out of the system, understand how different vendors and how we as an organization have performed, and plan to make changes across this organization and the procurement process. And then last but not least is the minimization of extra steps and unnecessary processes. This can be something as simple as having an approval process on every single part when you never actually reject a parts for approval. In this case, it's not approval, it's an awareness process. And there are different ways that we can accomplish this without slowing down the procurement process and leaving that particular piece of equipment out of circulation for a longer period of time. So let's understand the steps that we're taking, let's automate where we can, gather the information that we can, and ensure that all systems are treated equal so that we have that high quality data throughout the entire procurement process. This is not only going to help with reporting, not only going to help with ordering, but it'll also help at the end when we're looking to reconcile invoices and give us a lot of time back when it comes to being able to service and manage pieces of equipment. Now, order management and tracking is what happens after the order gets placed, or the request gets sent out of clinical engineering. And I put remove the mystery in parts procurement because many organizations, what happens is a parts request will be submitted and then they wait. They may get confirmation occasionally on a particular part, but for the most part, it goes into the procurement cycle. Eventually, a PO gets created, an order gets placed, but the requester, the technician, the person who's going to get that part at the end in order to repair the piece of equipment won't have any visibility to where that request is. So improving visibility of this request and order status throughout the entire procurement process so they not only know that when something's been approved, but when a PO has been generated, if it goes into a back-ordered state, they're aware that it is back-ordered. If it's confirmed, give them that confirmation. If there's the ability to gain a tracking number on that part, ensure that the tracking number is down to the technician. This will allow them to not only be able to schedule and understand their time for when a particular part will come in and they'll be doing a repair, but it also allows them to provide better customer service because they will be able to give direct answers when someone asks when something's going to be repaired. They can quickly and easily look in the system, look in their email, see exactly where that particular request is, when it's going to arrive, and then they'll be able to provide that information and really take all of the mystery out of when are my parts going to arrive. Oftentimes we'll hear things like, well, I placed my request and, if I don't get the part within a week, then I follow up and ask on it. Not only is that not good for being able to plan resources and understand what you're going to need to do, but you won't be able to provide any updates to anybody who may be looking for that piece of equipment until the part comes in. And if there was an issue or something that was caused that part to be back ordered or a delay to occur, that information won't get to the technician or to the requester until a week or so has gone by and they follow up on that particular part. In that same amount of time, they may have been able to find another source and have that part in hand and have that piece of equipment replaced. And then easy access to tracking information and backorder details. It really all ties in with being able to supply high quality information to the person who is looking for that part so they can plan accordingly and then disseminate that information across the organization and improve the overall feeling of when parts are going to arrive, when repairs are going to get completed, and take that mystery out of when am I going to have the pieces that I need in order to repair a piece of equipment. Now, at the end comes in reconciliation, and reconciliation is how do we pay that invoice? Now, oftentimes it'll be a very manual process where invoices all come in. They come into a director or manager of clinical engineering. They match them up with the information they have, and they sign off and approve on all of the individual parts and orders that come through. This takes a lot of time. It involves a lot of follow-up, and because we don't have the high-quality information inside the system, sometimes it's a lot of hunting to find the information that you're looking for. If you're not accurately tracking all of your materials inside of your work order, then it's not easy to just pull up those particular parts, see where they are, ensure that the pricing is correct, and sign off, and it involves a lot of digging. This also means that you're spending extra time where you could be servicing a piece of equipment. Now, the way we can solve this is through a number of different ways. One is through integrations into the asset management and ERP systems to improve the quality of data. If we're driving procurement through the work order, the material information is going to be applied to that individual work order. It can be reported on, it can be used to reference when invoices come in, and it is easily accessible to the organization. This also allows us to move it directly into the ERP so that we have a high quality of information in the ERP, and POs are getting cut for the correct amounts, so we don't have to go back and do a lot of the individual reconciliation pieces. The other piece is to automate via EDI. EDI is something that you guys will hear talked about. It's an electronic means of sending POs, confirmations, and invoices, and it's widely adapted throughout healthcare. And what EDI allows you to do is remove the phone, fax, and email from placing an order, have that order directly and immediately sent electronically through the ERP system to the vendor you're working with. Confirmations come through electronically, but the really nice piece is that when that invoice comes in, it matches the electronic PO, and those items are able to be automatically reconciled. So this allows us to remove a lot of the manual reconciliation and just do exception management. So we get into an area where instead of having to look at the vast majority of invoices that come in and sign off on them, you're looking at 5% or less of the invoices, understanding why the prices are changed or why they need approved, and signing off, giving you a lot of time back. This also improves our reporting and analytics. So having the good data throughout the entire process, really looking at procurement all the way from having good data at the time that you identify the part, all the way through the invoice coming in, is going to give you a lot of time back and open up a lot of opportunities to standardize and streamline the way that information flows. Now, those are the basic pieces of it. As you look into any particular organization, you're going to have a lot of different variables and a lot of pieces and parts that you're going to be working with. But by looking at those 4 individual pieces and how they tie into each other and how we can improve the way the information and the way the process flows so we can standardize it, reducing the number of variables and the number of outliers, and really automating as much as possible, you're going to get a number of benefits at first that you would expect, and some that are going to be a little bit of a bonus that are sort of extra that come along with just doing it right, like the idea of being able to actually track and understand inventory. Once you drive the information, that high quality information, back into the systems that track inventory, you are opened up with opportunities to have a better understanding of the way the parts flow in and out of your department. And you're going to be able to improve the efficiency and streamline process management. So at the very high level, it is going to be more efficient. Technicians will spend less time ordering parts, following up on those parts. They will know when those parts are going to be coming in, and they're going to be able to fully have a transparent view of the entire process. So it is about improving the quality of the information that flows through the system, reducing the number of steps, and at the same time, drastically reducing the amount of time spent doing those individual steps. Next, you'll be able to easily manage changes to the supply chain. Once you've standardized your supply chain and you have everybody working out of the same playbook, then you just are able to make changes to that playbook. When a particular vendor becomes available or is someone you want to utilize, you're able to insert them in. If a vendor stops performing well or you lose a particular discount with a vendor, you're able to remove that particular vendor from the process, and you can actively manage that supply chain and where you're purchasing from. This will not only give you the ability to quickly understand where your parts are coming from and make changes, but it'll also allow you to have a real good understanding of how they're performing for you and how you want to look at that relationship moving forward. If a particular vendor is not doing a good job servicing your parts and providing you parts quickly, that's information that you're going to want to utilize when you go to do a capital equipment purchase. If they're looking to supply new equipment to you, but they're not able to supply the parts afterwards, it's a fantastic point that you're able to use during leverage and negotiation. You also are able to minimize your vendor issues and procurement-related delays. By consolidating the vendors and standardizing the process and taking a quality-driven and results-based approach to managing your supply chain, you're going to be able to minimize the number of individual issues that you have from vendors. You're going to be able to ensure that the parts you need are arriving when you need them and when you expect to receive them. And you're going to be able to drastically reduce the amount of time you take while you feel out and experience the relationships with individual vendors. When an organization makes a decision and chooses a vendor, you should be able to quickly implement it across the entire organization, giving you the benefit of either adding or removing individual vendors and reducing these issues across the board. You also have the ability to increase customer satisfaction. And when I say customer satisfaction, it's the people you're repairing the equipment for. Having a good understanding of when you get stopped in the hallway, exactly when a part is going to arrive, any delays that you could possibly have, being proactive and telling your customer, I know you were waiting on this piece of equipment, this part is on back order, it won't come in until next Wednesday, before they have an opportunity to ask you. These are all the little things that really is going to put the department in a better light. So aside from just being able to save time and money, the department can be viewed better across the entire organization, and really your answers are going to be a lot more concise. If someone stops you in a hallway, you should know exactly where their piece of equipment is in the process, when they'll have it back, or any issues that could possibly have come up. And then you're going to be able to create data-driven insights and improvement plans. This is really taking it away from the anecdotal of, I worked with this vendor, I ordered 2 parts from them, they came in and they weren't good, so I stopped using the vendor. When you know that your organization has ordered 100 different parts from that vendor and those are the only 2 bad parts that came in. We're going to use this data-driven insights to change and modify the way that not only we use the vendors, but also how do we improve the process and remove additional steps, streamline it, remove any bottlenecks, and really be as transparent as we can through the entire process so that everybody from the technician when they're requesting it, through purchasing, creating POs, to the loading dock, receiving it into the ERP, to being delivered back to the technician and work orders being closed out, that they all have an opportunity to improve the process, improve the way that the data is put into the system, and you'll be able to pull a lot more detailed analytics and reporting and make much more intelligent decisions across the board on how you can improve the way that you're purchasing, where you're purchasing from, and not only be able to make those changes, but have the data to back up the changes and say you have made changes and this is how it's impacting your department. I made changes and I saved money. I made changes and I improved the amount of the turn time on how quickly we can repair a piece of equipment. I improved how much equipment we're able to handle. It's all data-driven, and these are going to be real information that you can then utilize to show the value of the department to the organization. That's the basic overview of this, and I know that it's a lot to take in, and I know it all comes at you very quick, and there are a lot of variables. So I appreciate your time today, and we'll open it up for questions. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Hey Jason, this is Jamie. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, but I wanted to remind attendees we still have 15 to 20 minutes for a Q&A, so please submit your questions at any time using the question feature on the dashboard. But Jason, to get us started, the first question I would like to pose is, how long does it take to consolidate vendors?
Depending on the approach taken and the size of the organization, it can be accomplished in as little as a month to 2 months. The first step is really understanding and gathering the data on who you're utilizing, and then starting to gather and understand the quality data so we can start to consolidate. Really understanding the supply chain and understanding how big your vendor base is the first step. But it's something that many organizations have accomplished over the course of a month. And then from there, it's important to note that it is not simply a make a change and then it's done. Really, it's about consolidating and then continually managing and improving that vendor database so that you can bring in and remove pieces from it fluidly. without interrupting anybody that is doing the individual processes. Really, the goal is to be able to actively manage that supply chain, consolidate those vendors, and then continually make improvements without interrupting anybody's ability to procure parts and receive the information back on them.
Great. Next question is, how does using one source to order parts mitigate my risk of overspending?
So, I mean, using a single source, a single source is a bit of a tricky spot to be in. Minimizing the number of vendors that you're able to work with really allows you to better report on the way that you're spending. So when you have a large number of vendors, you're pulling in a lot of data from a lot of different sources. You have a lot of different agreements and a lot of different pieces to compile to understand and ensure that you're spending exactly what you want. If you look and you said, okay, we'll use a small number. I have 50 different vendors that I purchase from, and I've negotiated 50 different discounts with those individual vendors, and then I purchase from them, and I take a 6-month time span, and I say, okay, how did I do in terms of managing those vendor relationships? It really is 50 individual tasks where you would have to take a look at how did each of those different vendors perform when providing parts to me? How did they perform in supplying those parts at our negotiated prices? And then repeating that across the board. And by narrowing the number of vendors, consolidating and streamlining in that direction, it really reduces the amount that you have to look at those individuals. It also increases your spend with a particular vendor, which increases your ability to negotiate discounts. So rather than trying to spread out and manage 50 different relationships and get the best deal possible, anything that you can do to reduce that number increases what you're spending with a particular vendor, increases your ability to negotiate, and then really increases your ability to keep them honest and ensure that what they're providing you is what you have agreed upon.
Great. I have another attendee question here. What should we do if we find a part in eParts Finder where the picture is incorrect?
That's a fantastic question. We work very hard to ensure that all of those photos are correct. And as you can imagine, with over 4 million parts inside the catalog, collecting all of those images and getting them into the catalog is something that that is a monumental task. Anytime you run into an issue, there is a trouble finding your part button that you can click in the upper right-hand corner of the catalog, and you can send us a message and let us know. There also is a tips and suggestions link at the bottom of the page. Really, any way that you can get that information to PartsSource will allow us to quickly make a change and update the catalog. It's something that we are actively changing every day. Parts come in and out of the catalog as well as images. So any way that you can get it to PartsSource, the better. If you're on the phone with us, just tell us. Otherwise, there are multiple links on the website that will allow you to send that information to us.
Another question that's been asked is, how can I create one standardized process when I manage multiple sites?
So the first piece of complexity there is understanding whether or not those multiple sites use the same systems. If you are working inside an organization that utilizes multiple CMMSs and multiple ERPs to accomplish the same tasks at different sites, you're going to have a much more difficult job than somebody who has got a standard set of software across the entire organization. Ordinarily, standardizing software is going to be, is a great first step. We know that's not always the option, but that obviously is something to look at and to understand when it comes to standardization. Not only that software, but then if the departmental support, if one organization has a purchasing department and another doesn't, that's another variable that inhibits complete standardization. But the first step really is understanding everything that is done today at those individual locations. So you would do an analysis of the procurement, pay-to-procure process at each one of those locations, really run through that entire step-by-step process, understand what systems are used and what individuals and what departments are utilizing them. I establish if there are any integrations or any connections between the software packages so that you have a clear understanding of the way data is being driven. And then from there, make either a single or or sort of two individual processes that are semi-standardized. So if you are using the same systems, then we can implement those at the same rate. If we're not, we look at standardizing the areas that we can. So if we are going into a singular ERP, we can take a look at how do we standardize PO creation, sending, confirmations, and invoices, and then look at what is the ways that we can most efficiently tie in the two processes when we get into part creation. So really it's understanding what do you do today, where are the similarities and opportunities for immediate standardization, and then taking a long-term goal of looking at these are the goals that we want to accomplish for the process, and then building a roadmap of here are the individual pieces that we want, and then slowly implementing them so that you're able to have a streamlined and easy process that will match up at the end. But the short answer is identify what you're doing today, pick the low-hanging fruit for standardization, and then roll out a long-term plan in order to get everybody on the same page. System unification is going to be a big piece of that, and we know that that can take a long time if it's possible. Otherwise, there are opportunities outside of that to standardize using some other means of electronic communication or batch filling into a program, you know, like eParts Finder that aggregates all of the data for you so that you're then able to pull it out and report on it.
All right, I have one additional question that I'd like to ask, but I want to remind the attendees now is your chance to submit a question before we wrap up the Q&A. Again, you can do so by using the question feature on your dashboard. But Jason, is there a membership fee or a cost to use PartsSource?
No, PartsSource is available to anyone. We have different programs that we do run. Everybody could go to eParts Finder today, log in, get a login, access the catalog, and purchase parts. Although we do have and do work with a number of organizations on much larger PartsSource Pro programs where we look and we come in and do a lot of the analysis on your current process, establish the standardization, work with you to do to understand and consolidate a large number of your vendors, all while reducing your overall part spend and giving you the advantages of the integrations and the process standardization. And Nicole would be a perfect person to, you know, elaborate deeper on that when if you wanted to get more information.
One additional question came in. Are you in GSA or ECAT?
GSA government.
We do have a GSA designation. I would have to defer that answer. It is not my area of expertise. But if you reach out, I can definitely get that information for you.
Great. Just to let you know, when we wrap up, I'll make sure that we do send over this attendee's name so you could reach out to them. And of course, this attendee will have all contact information that you can see on the screen right now. So please feel welcome to follow up with Nicole or Jason for additional details to your question. But I think that is going to wrap up the Q&A portion of the webinar. So I certainly want to extend a big thank you to Nicole and Jason for your time and your wisdom today. Of course, thank you to the sponsor, PartsSource. One lucky attendee will win an Amazon gift card for completing the post-webinar survey. That survey is going to appear shortly on your screen, and you must complete this survey to obtain the certificate of attendance. If you don't see the survey, you can email us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Just a reminder to everyone, we have webinars coming up almost weekly at this point. You can see a complete calendar at onetechnation.com/webinars. Please enjoy the rest of your afternoon.